You're watching The Business of Law, brought to you by Bloomberg Law and the ABA Journal. I'm Lee Pacchia. It's bonus season, that time of year where lawyers at big firms get big payouts and people like us sit around and try to figure out what it all means. With big law titans Cravath and Skadden making their big announcements earlier this week, we're talking to Lat and Elie Mystal from Above the Law. Welcome, guys. Good to see you.
Hey, thanks, Lee.
Thanks for having us.
So I guess we're going to start off with a philosophical question. Why do we care about big law bonuses? Can they tell us anything?
Oh, absolutely. I think that these bonuses offer us hints into the performance of these large law firms. And these law firms, some of them have revenues in the hundreds of millions or even billions. So you're talking about giant businesses. And how well they compensate their associates, their non-partner lawyers, offers some insight into how well these firms are doing.
So it's not just gossip?
Yeah, I think it's more. I think it's more about the hiring market. I think that's where we really learned something. The bigger the bonuses are, that suggests the more firms are afraid of losing talent, of gaining talent, and that sort of thing. When bonuses are small or middling, that shows that they're really not worried if you leave.
Okay, so before we get to the health of the market and the firms themselves, let's break down the specific numbers. How did lawyers at Skadden and Cravath do this year compared to last?
They got exactly the same.
Really?
The junior-most lawyers, first years get $10,000, and the most senior people get $60,000, and there are gradations in between.
Elie, is this surprising?
I think it's disappointing. I think it's underwhelming. And I know it's weird to say that a $60,000 bonus at the top end is disappointing and underwhelming. But like Lat said, this is exactly the same as last year. And last year was basically a recession bonus as it was. The partners are not making exactly the same as they were last year. So I think it's kind of disappointing if you're one of these associates.
Right. So for people that are new to the big law party, as it were, bonuses for first-year associates at top law firms was what in the early part of last decade?
Well, one of the things I did when we were looking at the Cravath bonuses, that I compared it to the 2007 bonuses, which were the last kind of pre-recession big bonuses. And what we found is that first-year associates in 2007 made $45,000 in their bonus. This year, first years are making $10,000 in their bonus. If you play that forward, if you were a first year in 2007, this year is the first year that you've received a bigger bonus than you did when you were just starting out, right? So we're in a situation where for a lot of these people, their bonus compensation has at best stagnated, if not gone significantly down over the past 4 or 5 years.
So the new normal is just the normal. I mean, is that what we can take away for the state of big law?
I think that's quite right. But I would point out, in response to Ellie's point, so much has changed between now and 2007. You had some major law firms go under. You've had law firms conducting massive layoffs of lawyers and of staff. These are challenging times, this new normal for large law firms. And so I think that if you can actually stay where you are, if you can tread water, if you can run in place, that counts as a victory, I'd say.
Right. Now, we have to say, with Skadden and Cravath, we're talking about the best of the best, the top of the rankings. How do you see this playing out as you go further down the food chain? Are we going to see similar moves, or is this...
Well, so the so-called top tier of law firms, however you want to define that, will generally follow the Cravath scale. Other firms do things a little bit differently, and instead of paying everyone of the same seniority, the same amount, they adjust it individually depending on hours or performance. So some law firms have more of a corporate America, Wall Street style model of individualized bonuses. And then if you go farther and farther down the hierarchy, you may find some mid-size or smaller law firms that don't pay bonuses at all. So when you look at these bonuses and you think about them in context, it's great that these people are getting bonuses compared to other lawyers in other areas.
Cravath certainly sets the standard, right? And every bonus after that will be rated on a scale of, is it better than Cravath or worse than Cravath? And at some firms, they will pay a little bit more if you work, 1,000 more hours and that sort of thing.
Well, so we're not quite done with bonus season yet. What are your expectations for the coming days and weeks? I mean, how do you see this going?
As Elie was saying, I think everyone's going to fall in line behind Cravath, at least the firms that see themselves as peers or competitors of Cravath.
And that's not necessarily a smart thing. I mean, we've done some work on Above the Law. Our research director, Brian Dalton, looked at this as well. You have firms that don't perform as well as Cravath that are still consider themselves Cravath peers, and to compete for the top talent at law schools feel forced to make bonus payments similar to Cravath, regardless of whether or not they can actually afford to do so.
And that poses financial and economic issues for the firm that's paying out that money, trying to keep pace with the leaders of the pack, as it were.
And the other thing to remember is that Cravath is so much smaller than a lot of the firms that a lot of their peer firms are actually much bigger. So a $10,000 payment for all first years at DPW, sorry, I meant DLA Piper, is going to cost DLA a lot more than it costs Cravath in some sense.
Let's flip to the mergers. We were anticipating some tie-ups this year for BigLaw mega mergers. There was one between Orrick and Pillsbury. There was another between McKenna and S&R Denton. Neither deal came to be at the end of the day. Why did these deals fail, in your view? David, let's start with you.
Well, it's a little bit hard to say. I would point out, Lee, that right now in 2013 to date, law firm mergers are at a record pace. So there's a lot of consolidation taking place in the industry. So I don't know how much we want to read into these two particular transactions falling through. One of the challenges in reading the tea leaves on law firm mergers is, unlike public companies, law firms are private partnerships, and they don't have to reveal their financials. And even when financials are quoted, these are often based on estimates provided by the American Lawyer, a leading trade magazine. They aren't audited financials or anything of that nature. They're not coming from 10Ks or 10Qs. And so it's hard to say. A lot of these mergers founder on financial issues, but we don't know exactly what. I think that nominally the explanation has to do with client conflicts.
I think the other point here, and Lat kind of alluded to, is that these are kind of case-by-case situations. I don't think they're larger trends here. These firms are some of these firms are very closely held by a small group of partners, and their personality issues as well. I mean, you don't want to be in the situation where nothing would force these people to kind of have to mingle their firm with somebody they don't really like if they don't want to. So I think from a case-by-case situation, you also have to look at the personalities.
What about these two deals, though? Would they have made sense on paper, at least from an outsider's viewpoint?
Well, it's hard to tell. Pillsbury, for instance, I mean, they've been selling themselves all over the street. And I don't know why, but they are.
Well, Orrick has been looking for a lot of merger partners as well.
And we have two ruling parties here. Why didn't this work out, guys?
They were even considered back in the day for a tie-up with Dewey Ballantine that turned into the ill-fated Dewey and LaBeouf. So both of those firms are always looking at strategic alternatives. I believe that in that case, they had a lot of issues relating to client conflicts. And if the client conflicts don't work, it's very hard to see what the value is in going forward with the transaction. Also with Orrick in particular, you have to remember they're going through a leadership change, or they've been through a leadership change where the former kind of CEO who had been really ruled that firm with quite a strong hand for a long time. I mean, he's out, there's a new guy in, so did you want this to be your first big decision as the new head of Orrick? Evidently not with Pillsbury.
All right. So we have these two deals that did fail. You said there were, probably didn't get done due to reasons particular to the firms. You don't think that there's a directional shift here? We had a lot of mergers earlier on in 2013. Do you see it continuing, or is this a point of I think we will still continue to see more transactions. For example, Patton Boggs is well known to be looking for a possible partner. Locke Lord has been one name floated, but other names have been floated as well. Again, also a firm in Europe is looking to get that deal. Absolutely. So as Elie was saying, I think it's very case by case, but as we've been covering on Above the Law, as the market gets more challenging for law firms, they will try to have these tie-ups in order to survive and succeed.
And I think that's how that ties into our previous conversation about bonuses, right? I mean, it's a difficult market right now for law firms, and there are efficiencies to be gained in scaling up. And firms are ruthlessly looking to exploit those efficiencies in this market. And remember, you don't have a labor problem, right? Because you've got more than enough labor to go around. If you can scale up in a way that makes sense, I think that's why we'll still see a lot of, if not actual mergers, certainly a lot of talk about them. Yeah, between bonuses and merger talk, 2013 has certainly been an interesting year, and I suspect 2014 is going to be interesting as well. Guys, thanks so much for coming by. Thanks for having us.
This is David Lat and Elie Mystal from Above the Law. If you'd like to learn more about the issues we just discussed, be sure to go check out our offerings on BloombergLaw.com and also on the Bloomberg Terminal. You can see more of our videos on YouTube, and you can follow our updates, of course, on Twitter. I'm Pacchia. Thanks for watching.